Bully slapped single dad veteran in a diner, not knowing that tattoo marked a Delta Force legend. A quiet diner turns into a scene of shock when a bully slaps a single dad, unaware he's a Delta Force legend. Watch how courage and restraint change everything. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share for more unbelievable true stories every week. So let's begin. The small roadside diner in Texas carried the smell of fried eggs, old coffee, and quiet struggle. Sunlight slipped through dusty blinds as trucks passed outside. Mark Carter sat in a worn booth with his 8-year-old son Ethan, trying to enjoy a simple lunch away from worries. Mark's face showed years of fatigue. Life after the army had not been kind. After losing his wife to cancer, he became both mother and father overnight. He worked odd jobs, saved every dollar, and never complained. The diner was their only small weekly comfort. He wore a faded gray hoodie, sleeves pulled down despite the heat. Beneath it were scars and a tattoo he never talked about. Mark had learned long ago that silence kept life simpler. People treated you differently once they knew who you were, or what you had done. Ethan talked excitedly about school projects and baseball tryouts. Mark listened closely, nodding and smiling softly. These moments mattered more than anything. No medals, no past missions, no memories of gunfire could compare to sitting across from his son, alive and safe. Near the counter, a loud man occupied 2 stools, laughing aggressively and slamming his glass down. His voice clashed with the calm atmosphere. Mark noticed him briefly, instinct stirring, but chose to ignore it. Trouble was something he'd promised himself to avoid. When Ethan slid out of the booth to use the restroom, his small shoulder brushed the man's leg by accident. The contact was harmless, barely noticeable, but the man reacted violently, jerking around and shouting at the child with drunken fury. Ethan froze, eyes wide, terrified by the sudden yelling. Mark stood up immediately, placing his body between the man and his son. He spoke calmly, apologizing for the accident, asking the man to relax. His tone carried control, not fear. The bully sneered, mocking Mark's quiet voice and worn clothes. He insulted him for being poor, weak, and invisible. Then, without warning, his hand flew across Mark's face. The slap echoed loudly, stunning the entire diner into silence. Mark stumbled but stayed on his feet. Pain flared across his cheek, but he did not raise his fists. Instead, he knelt quickly and pulled Ethan into his arms. His son trembled, clinging to him. "It's okay," Mark whispered, steady despite his racing heart. As Mark stood again, his sleeve slipped back slightly, revealing a faded tattoo on his forearm. He didn't notice it at first. He was focused on calming Ethan, on ending the moment peacefully. But someone else had already seen it. An elderly man sitting alone by the window stiffened, his eyes locking onto Mark's arm. His expression changed instantly, from casual interest to disbelief. He slowly set down his coffee cup, hands shaking slightly as memory flooded back. The old man leaned forward, voice low but firm. "That mark," he said quietly, "is not common." A few nearby patrons turned to listen. "I've only seen it on men who served where names don't exist and missions never get written down." The diner fell into a heavy silence. The bully sensed something shift and stepped back slightly, confused. Mark quickly pulled his sleeve down, uncomfortable with the attention. He had buried that life long ago. He wasn't a legend here, just a father protecting his child. The silence in the diner felt heavier than the slap itself. Forks hovered in midair, coffee cooled untouched. The bully's confidence began to crack as eyes shifted away from him and toward Mark. Something unspoken had entered the room, something deeper than fear. The elderly man slowly stood, his posture stiff but proud. His voice carried the weight of years and loss. He spoke about men who served in shadows, whose victories were never televised. His gaze never left Mark's arm, even though the tattoo was hidden again. Mark shook his head slightly, a quiet request for silence. He didn't want attention or praise. He wanted the moment to end, so his son could feel safe again. Fame, Even whispered fame was something he had avoided since leaving service. The bully laughed nervously, trying to regain control, but his voice lacked strength. He muttered excuses, claiming the old man was exaggerating. Yet his hands trembled. He sensed he had crossed an invisible line, one that couldn't be undone with insults. Another customer spoke up, a middle-aged truck driver with military patches on his cap. He had seen the way Mark stood, the calm, after the strike. "Soldiers like that don't swing first," he said. "They don't need to." Ethan clung tightly to his father's jacket, still shaken. Mark knelt again, meeting his son's eyes. He wiped away Ethan's tears with gentle fingers. "You did nothing wrong," he whispered. "Sometimes adults forget how to behave." The diner manager emerged from the kitchen, drawn by the silence. He took one look at the scene and asked what happened. Several customers spoke at once, but their words all pointed in the same direction. The bully's story fell apart quickly. Police sirens echoed faintly outside, as someone had already called them. The bully's bravado collapsed completely. He backed away, muttering apologies that sounded hollow. The damage had already been done, not to Mark's face, but to his own pride. When the officers arrived, Mark refused to press charges. He didn't want his son reliving the moment again and again. He only asked that the man leave and never return. The officers nodded, recognizing restraint when they saw it. As the bully was escorted out, the elderly man approached Mark slowly. His eyes were moist. "My brother served with men, like you," he said quietly. "He never came home. Thank you for carrying that burden for others." Mark swallowed hard, emotion tightening his throat. He nodded once, unable to speak. Words were never enough for memories like those. Ethan watched silently, sensing that his father carried something heavy, yet honorable. After the crowd settled, Mark and Ethan returned to their booth. The waitress brought fresh pancakes on the house, her hands shaking slightly. "For your son," she said softly, "and for your strength." Ethan looked up at his father with new understanding. "Are you a hero?" he asked. Mark smiled sadly and shook his head. "No, buddy," he said. "Heroes don't hurt people when they're angry. They protect what matters." As they left the diner, the sunlight felt warmer. Mark held his son's hand tightly, knowing the past would always live within him. But in that moment, he realized his greatest mission wasn't behind him. It was walking beside him.